Good afternoon. Give me one moment for these things to come together. Yeah, alrighty. Then pull up this webpage. Um, Let me just go ahead and speak real quick to several things. I already got the webpage here, but I want to speak to a few things real quick. First, for Sister Tammy Bowser and Brother Stephen Jackson. Uh, Hope that you guys are all right down there, given the circumstances situation in the state of California, more specifically in the southern region. Hope you guys are doing all right. Hope everything has been maintained. Um, this is really uh, a surprise. Um, I didn't see this one coming together the way that it did, but it's nice that it has. So just give me 1 second. I'm pulling up, sharing the screen now. And this article is going to take a while to get through. I'm not really going to stop and there's not really anything to stop and say. A lot of it's self-explanatory. Um, what I want to reference though is do you guys remember back when I did that video about China not taking anybody else's trash anymore? Well, this is this is almost a subsequent. This is a consequence that's going to be more reoccurring throughout the United States as more states are probably either forced or just have to find ways to cut costs. However, it all falls apart on them. But this is crazy because this article really is underplaying the drastic situation that's taking place. Let's go ahead and just jump right into this article. In Northwest Georgia, Donnie Smith spends slow mornings at his auto shop, watching Netflix and counting the trucks passing by his window. You can hear the 18-wheelers from a mile away, barreling down the picturesque Appalachian countryside as early as 4 a.m. Hundreds of them carry toxic coal ash and a sterile stench daily to the landfill next door, which leaves residents nervous about drinking the tap water from their otherwise pristine lake. There is another one, Smith points out, every minute or so. There is another one. I should have said like that. Smith points out every minute or so. Once they got the foot in the door, couldn't get them out. You'll find the same book, just a different verse, in downstate South Carolina, where Uncle Sam and private industry have left the Savannah River with radioactive cesium levels that are among the world's highest. And cesium is if I'm not mistaken, is like a silver, gold-looking substance that is liquid state at like 85 degrees or higher, uh, highly radioactive. Anyway, let's just go ahead and keep pushing. Uh, have left the Savannah River with radioactive cesium levels that are among the world's highest, according to the National Council on Radiation Protection and Measurements. Already saddled with at least $35 million in cleanup costs from the now bankrupt companies, the region's burden comes with radioactive alligators and disturbingly high cancer rates that shot up by as much as 25% in some counties between the 1980s and the 2000s. I'm not just going to sit here and tell you I'm not worried, says Audrey Lofton, a former Savannah River site janitor. What can a little nobody like me do but talk about it? Stories like these are piling up as surely as the growing landfills in their backyards. Individual trash dumps in the South have drawn national attention in the past, but an in-depth investigation of the OZY reveals a previously unreported, persistent trend of northern waste being systematically shoveled onto southern shoulders. 7 of the 10 states that export the biggest chunk of their municipal solid waste, commonplace trash, are from the north, according to the thousands of pages of trash status and public records from all 50 states, according analyzed by the OCY. Meanwhile, we found that of the 10 states that receive the most waste as a share of the total trash burden are in the South. Virginia, third in the nation, followed by South Carolina in the sixth, Mississippi, the eighth, Kentucky, the ninth, and Georgia in 10th place, according to their latest data. Sure, Oregon and Pennsylvania lead the country with 41.3% and 39% of their managed municipal solid waste coming from other states, respectively. However, those states solitary islands of rubbish in the Pacific Northwest and Northeast. Did you hear that? Solitary islands of rubbish. So they're saying that they're all not congealed together. They're all not sequestered in one area. The South carries an outsized burden. No other region has more than one state in the top 10 receiving waste. The Bible Belt's outlook is worse than when you consider less common trash. South Carolina has become the epicenter of America's radioactive waste, only expected to grow with President Donald Trump's plan to expand the country's nuclear arsenal. Georgia is becoming a depository for millions of tons of coal and ash, rife with toxic chemicals that are known to cause everything from ulcers to lung and kidney cancer, that its neighbors have declared too dangerous to keep. Now, I want to caveat real quick. A big reason why the Chinese, I know, stopped taking trash from America is because not countries, but states in the South and everywhere else, I'm sure, were taking enormous amounts of human waste and placing them in items and sending them to China. This would also explain China's fervent tendency to send lead-laced and other poisonous things to the people via normally the children. But I'm just going to keep it pushing. And Alabama, which doesn't even keep a count of statewide imports, has emerged as a particularly odious example. And odious is something that is repulsive. In the western suburbs of Birmingham, locals were furious after trains carrying 10 million tons of raw northern sewage sat festering for months last summer, breeding swarms of mosquitoes. I never dreamed somebody could flush a load in New York City and can have it run into my backyard, said Charles Nix, mayor of the city of West Virginia, of West Jefferson in Alabama. The procession seems never ending. Even if one trash fight is won by locals, another sprouts up in its wake. But in a place where allegory is impossible to shake, the pain isn't only economic and environmental, it's also spiritual. This is not my backyard mentality has inspired the acronym, or not in my backyard mentality has inspired the acronym NIMBY, and is perhaps nowhere more prevalent than when referring to waste. Municipalities across the U.S. are facing disposal challenges because of China, but particularly in the Northeast, which has little space thanks to the highest population density in America. Still, part of the southward trash shift is also about political belief. Northeastern lawmakers are tightening environmental and licensing regulations that make it harder to open new landfills or expand existing ones. In the past 2 years, the Northeast has raised its average landfill tipping fees, the per ton cost for anyone dropping off waste at a processing facility, more than any other region, increasing them by $7.26 to total $67.39 data evaluated by the OZY showed. Only the Pacific at $68.46 is costlier, according to the studies by the Environmental Research and Education Foundation, the ERF or ERF. And I just have to stress this enough to y'all. I told everyone about this. I spoke on this. And it's just funny that it's just now. Like I said, almost a year later, everything would pick up and become a big issue. Here it is. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm not wrong again. Consider that the final keynote speech at a Solid Waste Association of North American conference in Boston in February was titled Shrinking Capacity, Rising Costs in New England Waste Management. Boston was a fitting setting as the capital of Massachusetts, a state of nearly 7 million people that produces almost 5 million tons of trash a year. The state's environmental agency has admitted that by 2021, it may only have one available landfill left. But leading the pack among waste exporters are New York and New Jersey, which both sent nearly 2/5 of their trash to other states, their latest data shows. Now, let me tell you guys something, little known fact. New Jersey has the most radioactive toxic waste dumped in it than any other state going forward. Meanwhile, Bible Belt states have been in a race to the bottom of the heap since 2016. Only the South down $1.10 to $43.30, and South Central down $1.50 to $34.80. Regions have lowered their tipping fees. That makes them the cheapest dumping grounds in America. The consideration for whether waste gets shipped further away is an economic one, says the ERF CEO, Brian Staley. With many state lawmakers actively courting waste management companies and incentivizing them with tax breaks, the revenue from managing waste still isn't massive, even for states with the low GDP, gross domestic product. And so what they're trying to say is that to manage waste is not a problem. Is this there's almost no money gained from it now. But now if you have to go back to China and talk about how China said pretty much cut America's throat because they said we're not going to buy anything anymore. And what we will buy, we're buying it at a reduced rate, much cheaper rate. So it's not worth people who are trying to make a bunch of money. It's not worth them paying you a livable wage and a fair wage to do a job that is, by all means and intents and purposes, filthy, nasty, and disgusting in that order going forward. Mississippi, for example, received about $5 million in municipal solid waste related taxes in 2017. The same year, its state's budget eclipsed $5 billion with the B. Yet local government taxes on landfills have for decades proved attractive to cash-strapped counties. In 1978, the nation's largest hazardous waste dump, a 2,700-acre heap nicknamed the Cadillac of Landfills, opened in Sumter County near Emil, Alabama, and a community more than 65% Black and a third of its residents beneath the poverty line. Now, I want y'all to understand this is going to be a trend that you see going forward. The project brought hundreds of jobs and a few $1 million each year in county tax revenue, though Sumter County still has some of the nation's highest unemployment and poverty rates. When another Alabama landfill was bought by New Jersey-based Transload America in 2007, it promised that it would raise $3 million a year for nearby town Brundage, a 72% Black community where 31% live in poverty. In reality, the landfill at times brought as little as $400,000, the town mayor told reporters in 2010, before ceasing most operations a few years later. So the mayor's like, I'm pocketing most of this, so really it's bringing in nothing. Anyway, the low tipping fees make rural, low income, and oftentimes Black communities in the South particularly vulnerable as receptacles of garbage from the North. Virginia imports 26% of its waste, followed by South Carolina 16%, Mississippi and Kentucky 15%, and Georgia 14%. It's literally a game of pass the trash, and it always seems like the poor people end up losing. Should have said the black people, says Democrat Adam Edeling, a former state auditor in Kentucky. Politicians and companies have been completely blind to the growing heaps. Haven't been completely blind to the growing heaps, and not everyone minds them. Alabama legislators in 2017 passed a bill closing a loophole that automatically approved landfill permit applications unless counties explicitly rejected them within 3 months. Farmers in a northeast Alabama town called Flat Rock are using out of state human waste as fertilizer. In Virginia, a bipartisan agreement was announced in January to dig up coal ash dumps and the waste send that waste to lined landfills. Electric electric utilities from Georgia Power to North Carolina-based Duke Energy have started excavating ash ponds in search of safer disposal methods. Aaron Colbert, a spokesman for Duke Energy, said that they would prefer not to transport coal ash. Now, I want y'all to understand, do y'all see how they move from poop to freaking toxic fucking waste just like that? Just, I mean, boom, it was so smooth how they did it. When I was reading, I was totally flabbergasted that they flipped it like that. So let me go ahead and let y'all know. Going forward, they're going to talk about toxic waste and human waste, which are the same thing, but we're talking about chemicals, going back to things like, cesium or whatever. Aaron Colbert, a spokesman for Duke Energy, says that they would prefer not to transport coal ash from a plant site at all. But the aggressive deadlines to close some of these basins leave us with few alternatives. Still, the mounting trash leaves many of these communities now threatened by toxin exposure and groundwater contamination, highlighted amid the water crisis in Flint, Michigan. A Still County in Edeling's home state of Kentucky is an example. It bears the slogan, "Where the bluegrass kisses the mountain." But in 2015, its beauty was marred after out-of-state trucks illegally dumped 2,000 tons of radioactive fracking waste in a landfill across the street from a local middle school in Irvine. 3 years later, Kentucky has yet to excavate the toxic playground. It fined the 8 companies a total of $3 million, an amount locals complained was simply the cost of doing business. For culprits like Fairmount Brine Processing, one of those companies fined. Fairmont Brine has raised more than $90 million from investors since 2012. So they're saying these 8 companies had to pay $3 million. They're like, what is that to this? This one dude made 90. This one company made 90. You feel me? Come on, man. It's sickening. Anyway, let's keep it going. Attorney General Andy Beshear, a Democrat, has decided not to pursue criminal charges. How surprising. The importation of radioactive waste from another state is a felony, says Mary Cromer, a lawyer from the Appalachian Law Center. But she was told by the state they couldn't prove that the culprits knew what they were doing was illegal, so they couldn't take them to court. We're not happy with that explanation, Cromer says. It represents this tragic worldview in which we don't know our true value as a people or as a state, says Edelin, who lost to Beshear in the Democratic primary of Kentucky governor's race in May, and says felony charges should have been issued. Being a dumping ground for Yankee trash is not only inconsistent with what we ought to be doing, with what we ought to be in terms of our policies and values, is spiritually where we ought not to be. This is where they got the whole, it has a spiritual effect. But anyway, they can slap their mouths for talking like that. The radio warns of the coming fog, hiding auto shops, trailer homes, and the churches on what seems like every block. These state highways lead from Augusta, Georgia to Barnwell, South Carolina, past the small port towns built after the federal government took over their lands, an area larger than Manhattan, set up a facility to process fuel for hydrogen bombs 7 decades ago. What used to be the StarMet CMI uranium processing plant on Metal Road is now a giant headache for the state of South Carolina. The Concord, Massachusetts-based company declared bankruptcy in 2002 following multiple violations of its federal radioactive materials license. The Environmental Protection Agency spent 2 years removing debris and treating depleted uranium ponds that were poorly lined and in danger of spilling over. It took until 2017 for South Carolina's Department of Health and Environmental Control to come up with a plan for removing the contaminated soil, a process expected to cost the state at least $35 million. You open up shop in a small podunk southern South Carolina town. When you're done, you close the door, walk away, and who was going to make sure you actually cleaned it up? Says Savannah Riverkeeper, Executive Director Tonya Tanya Bonitibus, whose organization works to protect the area against pollution. But at least StarMet was closed down when it started polluting. The opposite is evident 11 minutes down the road, where the Kim nuclear site takes waste from New Jersey and Connecticut, as well as from within South Carolina. The subsidiary of Utah-based Energy Solutions was once responsible for storing three-quarters of the nation's low-level nuclear waste, items exposed to radioactive material, and now is one of four low-level radioactive waste disposal facility sites in the nations. The other are Clive, Utah, Richland, Washington, and Andrews, Texas. The site has been leaking radiation into the nearby water supplies for at least 4 decades, probably all 7 decades, according to the court records reviewed by the OZY. Pollution levels in a nearby tributary were found in the mid 2000s to be even higher than those at the nearby nuclear weapons facility. The Savannah River site, SRS, at least a quarter of the monitoring wells near the landfill tested for tritium levels at or above the federal water standard, according to more recent data from the Department of Health and Environmental Control. And tritium is I want to say it's like, is it like a twin cell to it's a twin cell to one of these chemicals, only what's different? It has two neutrons. Okay, there we go. It's just like hydrogen, only it has two neutrons where hydrogen doesn't have any. There we go. Bam. And it's produced high up in the atmosphere. They actually put tritium in stuff that glows in the dark, and like guns that use certain type of optics. All sorts of things have tritium in it. However, going forward, some of the stuff we use at home have tritium in it. However, let me just keep it pushing. At least a quarter of the monitoring wells near the landfill tested for tritium levels at or above the federal water standard, according to more recent data from the Department of Health and Environmental Control. In a statement to the OZY, Kim Nuclear blamed the tritium levels on low-level radioactive waste from older trenches constructed when technology was not as advanced as it is today and regulations were not as strict. It has since improved its practices, now meets and will continue to meet regulatory compliance requirements, the firm says. But the state Supreme Court earlier this year concluded that the site has not yet demonstrated compliance with this series of regulations. Though Kim Nuclear claimed that was based because it had not so far been allowed to supplement the court record with the changes to its disposal practices. A whole bunch of long-winded bullshit saying that pretty much the stuff is messed up because of how it was back in the day, and they're saying that we haven't changed it because this court ruling makes it official when we have to change it. So it's just a whole bunch of spinning of the wheels. The battle over the Kim nuclear site is only South Carolina's latest as it attempts to shake off its status as a radioactive trash can. When the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission first selected its land to build parts for nuclear weapons in the 50s, locals took their cross willingly. We felt like we were keeping the country from being run over by the Soviet Union, says Catherine Theron, who worked at the SRS nuclear facility for more than 40 years. Yet once the nuclear facility was here, it was hard to push away private companies that wanted to bring radioactive waste to the region too. Initially, it made sense. We need to keep people working, says Bonatibus, the Savannah River keeper, describing the thinking at the time. We're disposing nuclear waste already, so why shouldn't we bring more waste from other places? It did bring 100,000 jobs, turning sleepy towns like Aiken and Augusta into hotspots for engineers and scientists. Theron says that the site employees worked hard to keep it from polluting the river. The Savannah Riverside facility directly employs 8,566 people and is responsible for more than 18,000 jobs in the region, making it one of South Carolina's larger employers, according to the 2016 SRS report. Yet, that present detail doesn't seem to do good to some locals. It's not fair. Lofton, the former SRS janitor, says, suggesting that other states should pitch into. It's all swampland, one of Tatiba says, referring to South Carolina's coastal plain. And so the contamination sinks and takes off with the water. In the early 1980s, an engineer named William Lawless exposed how the DuPont company operating at the SRS had, for decades, dumped radioactive materials such as tritium and plutonium in cardboard boxes and shallow trenches. Stop right there. If he did this in the early 1980s and they would have been doing it for decades, listen, that's more than 4 decades right there. Man, listen, the play on words by these bastards is so vicious, man. It's super vicious. Do you see what I'm talking about? Do you see why I said China said we're not taking shit from y'all no more? Because these dirty motherfuckers was doing all kinds of foul shit, putting human waste, radioactive stuff, all inside of things that they're sending to China that China was processing, exposing their people to. That's why a lot of their shit is a toxic wasteland. That's why China was like, we're sending toys to these people trying to make their babies retarded. Anyway, in 1988, Southern Changes, the Journal of the Southern Regional Council, published a report by the Washington based Environmental Policy Institute that showed how people in the area were receiving radiation doses 50 times what they should be getting. So I guess radiation is not totally unnormal, or is just they put it in the environment and have said that we're exposed to it, or the sun, like I said, is natural radiation. So they expect you to get radiation from certain things in the environment. And they're saying that this produces 50 times the radiation than, let's say, the sun does. Use that as an example. They have discovered a leukemia rate among workers twice that than what it should have been, and worried that an earthquake similar to the one in nearby Charleston in 1886 could cause a rupture of the plutonium tanks that would make the Chernobyl accident look like spilled milk. Wow! Did you fucking hear that? If there's an earthquake over in this shit, it's done. It's fucking done. Those dangers have only mounted over the years. Around 37 million gallons of highly radioactive liquid waste, including plutonium, are currently stored in 43 underground tanks listed for EPA cleanup. Plutonium has a half-life of 24,100 years and can remain hazardous for as long as a quarter of a million years. Oh, but fuck all that bullshit what the scientists say. The shit is dangerous and it'll fucking kill you. That's what's important. Even Theron, who defends the SRS, can't deny the effects of radiation on the region. She has experienced them personally as a cancer survivor. I had it twice, and it doesn't run in my family, the 86-year-old says, chalking it up to a time when, as a lab technician in 1955, she unknowingly worked in a puddle of high-level radioactive waste for days. I did get burned outright badly, she admits. The Savannah River site did not reply to our request for comment, but its leadership has disputed concerns and highlighted the facility's safety. In 2007, researchers found that general death rates for SRS workers were slightly lower than the average American death rates. However, male workers were 4 times likelier to die from cancer of the pleura and marginally more likely to die of leukemia compared to the average American man. Women employed there were 2.5 times more likely than the average American woman to die from kidney cancer. It is plausible that occupational hazards, including asbestos and ionizing radiation, contribute to these excesses. The study authors concluded. The study did not explore the health outcomes of other residents. You know why? Because people who live in the nearby region suffer more, and if they compared them to the nation, it would be even more flabbergasting. The reasons nuclear burden appears because these are people who work for a company that have fucking insurance. So they had insurance to be able to fight the cancer. The cancer didn't just eat them up. You guys get to take little small trips into the mind of Demetrius when I go off and I caveat like that. The region's nuclear burden appears set to grow. Under the Trump administration, the Department of Energy has announced plans to end Obama-era project to convert surplus plutonium into commercial reactor fuel. Instead, it has suggested using the SRS to source plutonium cores for new weapons. Meanwhile, the public faith in the state's ability to protect them from the contamination has suffered following recent water safety scares. In Belton City, officials found lead levels nearly 4 times the safe amount in the water in September 2018. But they notified the public about their finding only in January, 4 months later, even though babies, children, and pregnant women are especially vulnerable to the poisoning from excessive lead. And in November, regulators ordered the city of Denmark to stop using a form of non-EPA approved pesticide that they had injected into the water supply for a decade. The active ingredient in the chemical causes skin and eye issues, and some residents reported hair loss. Whoa. Let me break this down real quick. Alrighty, get back to my spot. Dirty bastard. I don't know why it just did that to me. Oh, covered a lot of it already. Damn. Put it in. Damn, I put it in. 1 second. I mean, we're almost done. Here we go. Changes in mortality rate. All cancers, 1987 to 2003. And this is where they got the 80s to the early 2000s information. So look at Burke County. Right on. 0 to 24. Look at the U.S. I need to understand this. Okay. It's in the negatives all across the U.S. They're as high as, looks like 50 at the highest over the years. So as the years have gone by, there's the mortality rate has gone up, especially through the younger people who are ages 0 to 24 because they've been drinking what? Lead-based toxic fucking wastewater. Man, this shit is so crazy, y'all. I just need y'all to really see what the hell I'm talking about. Oh, this is trouble in paradise, okay? Because this is the last thing that the United States needed. It's not just here it's not just the South. It's everywhere in the U.S. that's like this. And this is why China not taking the trash anymore is so detrimental. But we're going to keep it pushing. That's left activists comparing South Carolina's oversight with its next door neighbors. We like to say that Georgia is really good about having law in the books, not so great about enforcing them, says Bonita Tibas of Savannah Riverkeeper. And South Carolina, it just chooses not to have law, she adds. Not that Georgia is unaffected. Following the Savannah River down to Shell Bluff, a majority Black rural community along Georgia's eastern border with South Carolina, it receives both the wastewater from the SRS and regurgitated water from the nearby plant Vogtle nuclear reactor. University of Georgia researchers have found radioactive turtles and soar-ridden fish there. The cancer death rate in Burke County, where the reactor is based, increased by 25% from 1987 to 2003. According to a study by epidemiologist Joseph Mangano, published by the U.S. Nuclear Regulatory Commission, Mangano attributed the spike of radioactivity in the air, water, and dirt. This, while in the nation, cancer This while the national cancer death declined by 4% over the same time period. Listen, cancer went down over around all the other places in the nation, but because they sequestered so much of the toxic waste, and they're only doing this shit to where black people are at, man. I'm trying to tell you, I'm in trouble in paradise. So all those black folks who thought that they were going to be able to just hide it out, and just as long as I stay out the way, and I don't cause no problems. No, they still get to fuck you in the end. Come on, man. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter where you go as a black person. It don't matter. Those statistics fit the experience of Annie Laura Howard Steffens, a lifelong resident and civil rights activist who has had her father, mother, two brothers, a sister, and two cousins die from various cancers. Whole families have been wiped out, says the 73-year-old trained surgical technician, who adds that surgeons would try to figure out what was wrong, only to find that patients' organs were already eaten up by the cancer. Holy fuck. So it's just too late. They're like, what's wrong? And they're like, holy shit, their liver's looking like beef jerky in there. It's over. You feel me? It's done. Anyway, let me just keep it pushing. The waste shuffle isn't just radioactive, and it doesn't always come from northern neighbors. That's what Dink Smith, a community publisher, discovered when he learned of a proposal for a new 4-mile line that will bring 10,000 tons a day of toxic coal ash to the South Georgia town of Jessup, with the population of fewer than 10,000 people. In just a few years, you could have millions of tons stored there, he remembers thinking that day, that day, that January day in 2016. So he took action, organizing community town halls, hiring a team of lawyers, at first out of pocket, later funded by donations, and eventually published 97 columns, 75 stories, and 99 editorial cartoons on the subject. His concerns would prove justified. Each year, coal-fired power plants across the country churn out 100 million tons of coal ash containing carcinogenic metals such as arsenic, lead, and mercury. Typically, these have been stored in unlined coal pits, which EPA reports have concluded increases cancer risk by 2,000 times what regulators consider an acceptable amount. But in 2015, the EPA ruled that coal ash ponds would either be sealed off or dug up and transported elsewhere. In many cases, that elsewhere looks like a rural small town Jessup. A power plant in Harriman, Tennessee, sent 1.1 billion gallons of coal ash sludge into a nearby river in 2008. Hundreds of workers responsible for cleaning up the mess have come down with lung diseases, cancers, skin conditions, and other ailments linked in medical research to the toxic stew of chemicals and metals in coal ash, according to a U.S. Today investigation last year. How many of those people you think were black? Dozens of those workers have died already. How many of them do you think were black? Once the sludge was cleaned up and dried later in 2008, it was a landfill in the poor majority black city of Uniontown, Alabama, that ended up taking 4 million tons, the majority of the recovered ash. Independently, Nesmith and his team have discovered that the nearby Broadhurst landfill took in at least 800,000 tons of coal ash from Jacksonville from 2006 to 2014 without public hearings or notices. Jeremy Pocher, the environmental manager for Arizona-based Republic Services, which owns the landfill, confirmed that in 2016. Part of what upsets me is these big municipalities, these big companies, they'll turn rural areas into sacrifice zones. Smith says, let me read that to you again. Part of what upsets me in these big municipalities, these big companies, they'll turn rural areas into sacrifice zones. He's talking about black people, man. Oh my goodness, trouble in paradise. If I didn't know any better. We have a right to drink clean water, breathe clean air, just as much as anybody else. Republic initially insisted criticism, sending letters to county commissioners saying that the local protest was threatening jobs and money for the county. Later, it tried to charm offensive, giving tours of the landfill and spotlighting its cutting-edge technology. Since it has since it has waved the white flag, at least momentarily, withdrawing its permit applications. The Smith, tracing over tracing over photos of the southeast swampland that makes for leaky landfills but beautiful country, channels his Southern Baptist faith in a good question that sounds more like a prayer. Some cypress trees were growing in that water when Jesus was praying in the Garden of Gethsemane. Why would you want to poison a treasure that has been there for over 2,000 years? Do you want that in your legacy? Now let me go ahead and say something to you. For anybody to try to defend this country of America, they're wrong. But the fact that the poor people who come from the descendants of the people who built this country, can you dig it? That's what makes this whole thing even more inexplicably disgusting. Ironically, Georgia's problem started when the state tried to create rules for landfilling coal ash in 2016. By regulating it on the front end, they sent out a signal. Hey, everybody, send your coal ash here, says Abel Limscomb, an attorney for the Southern Environmental Law Center. The Peach State took in nearly 2.5 million tons of coal ash in 2017. About 80% of that headed to the R&B landfill in Northwest Georgia, Banks County. Smith, the owner of the auto shop next to it, remembers how the landfill seemed to shift overnight from regular waste until its traffic was almost entirely white cap coal ash trucks. They just kept growing, he says. Environmental advocates say that other landfills are likely to expand too. That's because in the waning moments of this 2018 session, the state legislature tacked on a rider bill to keep coal surcharges at $1 a ton. Wow! While the regular solid waste was raised to $2.50 a ton. Now, this is an incentive to take even more coal ash, Lincomb says. Georgia Power, the electrical utility, donated $400,000 to state lawmakers in the past two election cycles, stands to benefit the most. $400,000 means that they're gonna, man, that's sick. I did not tell y'all that the 400 grand that was generated only sometimes in that one little small town or whatever. Did not tell you that went right into the pockets. That's the same number. The same number comes up again. Come on. The company denies using its lobbying influence with the bill, which passed the state Senate 42-11 and House 155 to 8. We are in compliance with the law as we will remain focused on our ash pond closure plans, responds spokeswoman Holly Crawford. After a spill by Duke Energy filled the Dan River with coal ash, North Carolina dug up its coal ash ponds and sent nearly 750,000 tons of excavated material to Georgia and Virginia in the 2015 and 16 fiscal year. Virginia has since passed its own cleanup bill, guaranteeing that more coal ash will be sent to Georgia, joining waste from South Carolina and Florida. Still, while coal ash is toxic, it's a bit much easier to stomach than the shit Alabama received. Home to a thriving food scene and home to a thriving food scene and an emerging startup hub, Birmingham is no backwoods. Its suburbs have blossomed too. And half hour away, West Jefferson calls itself the town with the future, with the recently opened interstate that folks hope would bring new jobs, business, and energy. But that was before the poop trains came. Hundreds of them shuffled human waste 1,000 miles from New York to nearby Big Sky Environmental Landfill beginning in the spring of 2017. They transferred their load to trucks, which hauled the biosolids, around 7% of New York City's annual treated sewage, up to nearly 800 million pounds a year, through West Jefferson to the landfill in Adamsville. Now let's stop right there. Which one would you rather have? Somebody's fecal matter and urine and whatever else came out of their body? Or toxic waste? I mean, literal radioactive. Is this shit? You don't, it's one is toxic, one's radioactive. Both you could argue are the same. It's disgusting, man. Anyway, let me go ahead and keep it pushing. As the weather, excuse me, Residents complained that the truck spilled a smelly sludge that wrapped onto tire tracks. As the weather got warmer, they attracted an almost biblical plague of flies and odors. When the county was able to end the operation after it ran afoul of zoning laws, the train shifted to Parrish, where they piled up for 2 months just 50 yards from homes and a youth baseball diamond, until New York City and New Jersey canceled their contract amid public uproar. A portion of the Big Apple's 2.4 million pounds of daily sewage is dropped off in Georgia, too. From the perspective of the landfill's owner, Big Sky Environmental, poop trains were the boogeyman for the host of unfounded citizen complaints. A spokesman, Gene Duncan, admits that the truck spills but rejects resident accusations. Everything from the dog losing hair to the barbecues being ruined by a swarm of flies. Those flies, Duncan argues, would have to travel 12 miles and through another landfill to get there. Well, how far were they traveling to get there when the stuff first spilled? So why is it why does it have to be impossible, man? Anyway, in his opinion, that's all it is. In his opinion, locals just wanted to latch onto an old narrative that Yankees were sending their crap down here, and we just weren't going to put up with it, he says. Even before the poop came, Tammy Taylor was skeptical of the landfill. She began a Facebook page reporting on the city council, which included both Mayor Pam Palmer, chairman of the Landfill Authority Board, and then Councilman John Clickman. Palmer's nephew, operation manager for Big Sky Environmental Landfill. There was no transparency, says the African American mother of five, and this is her husband right here, this white dude. Agencies tasked with the oversight of waste in many southern states also lack the funds to track it. The 2017 Environmental Council of the States report showed Alabama had the least funded environmental agency per capita in 2013, 14, 15 at just 10 at just $10.60 at just $10.63 per person. The most funded agency in Hawaii received almost $200 per person in 2015. That year, Georgia had the third least funded agency, $13.77, and South Carolina had the seventh worst at $18.22. Although the state legislature instituted a 2-year moratorium on importing waste in 2011 and closed some loopholes recently, Alabama remains a popular dumping ground thanks to its open land, lenient regulations, and low tipping fees. At the turn of the decade, the Mobile-based Press Register reported that the Alabama Department of Environmental Management, EDM, accepted about 7.5% of the nation's waste, despite the state only producing 1.6% of it. ADEM advertises itself as being pro-business and doesn't track waste reports, despite receiving the data from landfills. A spokesman suggests it will take too long to put together and did not provide answers to further requests for comment. What we know that translates into fewer inspections, fewer boots on the ground, and inability to respond to these emergency situations, says Keith Johnston, the Southern Environmental Law Center managing attorney based in Birmingham, who argues the agency is too permissive. In July, the agency renewed the Big Sky environmental landfill permit without finding them, despite finding the landfill failed to annually sample its discharge and had illegal leaks while accepting the northern sewage. You don't think that at the local level hold people accountable by banding together as a community, Taylor says. But while Big Sky Environmental has said it will no longer take bio waste, nothing in its contract or state law prevents them from doing so in the future. State Rep Tommy Haynes, a Republican, is now hoping to force a statewide vote next legislative session on a bill that would allow voters, rather than the community commissioners, to decide whether to accept biosolids from other states. So what's the solution? Technology holds some answers. Last year, Washington State University researchers created a process for turning coal ash into concrete that, if scaled properly, could solve Georgia's problem. In January, Berkeley, California-based Deep Isolation successfully dropped and retrieved a prototype canister, which in practice would hold radioactive waste more than 2,000 feet into the Earth's surface. Policymakers could also create a more equal distribution nationwide, with an emphasis on land that poses fewer environmental or health risks. Politicians have proposed Yucca Mountain in Nevada as an option for nuclear materials for decades, since waste could be stored far below the surface and the closest population center, Las Vegas, is 100 miles away. However, the state of Nevada and others argue seismic activity in the area could be dangerous. Coal ash could be sent west, suggests Bonavativis, where desert environments and sparse populations would be less susceptible to the dangers of toxic waste. But companies aren't eager to foot the bill for shipping coal across the country. Finally, regulatory agencies could standardize how waste is gathered, experts say. Fewer than half of America's waste states Fewer than half of America's states consistently collate their waste export data volumes. Three states, Alaska, Idaho, and Wyoming, don't require any tracking of waste. Some states lump other forms of waste, such as hazardous or mechanical waste, with municipal solid waste muddying the information. Kent Forrester, an environmental protection specialist at the EPA, is leading an effort to start collecting like data from all states, but it hasn't yet been implemented. Better information could lead to better solutions. It's unclear which, if any, of these efforts might yield a fix. Until then, the disproportionate burden of waste on America's South will continue to deepen a historic divide in an already fractured country. For folks like David Grassfield, a 71-year-old retiree in West Jefferson, Alabama, they've got the land up there, he says, bluntly. They can handle their stuff, and we'll handle ours. And I know that that took forever to read. I'm not going to do a elaboration with the article in your face. I'm just going to stop it and look at you and go see how you're doing, because that's what we do. But as you guys can hear, man, like it's not just it's it's more than one thing happening. You know what I'm saying? It's obviously a it's a major effort that they're doing right now. Um, but this really just goes back to that article that I did all forever ago about China not taking anybody's trash, and it's like people didn't take that really serious. I don't think. I'm not saying that you guys didn't. I just think that the the overall environment of people who like to try to run up and steal stuff. Because a lot of these guys who talk all the stuff that they talk out the side of their necks, a lot of them live in the South, um, where this is actually affecting people that they probably know, if not one of them. And so this is kind of like a warning to my people who live in the South, like, hey, you need to be careful about the water that you're drinking. You should probably boil your water, get some cold filters, filter your water through the cold filters. I mean, I would take a few extra steps. I don't drink regular tap water like that. I boil my water all the time. I do stuff like I do it all the time. I do this type of stuff. It's really important that you do it. Um, I know it doesn't seem like it's a huge deal. Trouble in paradise. Um, because once it becomes an issue, a major one, there's going to be somebody who eventually stands up and says, okay, well, look, you're not going to keep dumping this shit down here. You can't. You're killing folks by and large, and they're dying unnatural deaths. It's easy for somebody who's not being affected by something to say, well, you're just going to have to deal with it. But, you know, it's a lot easier for a person to really just kind of look at you or act as if like what you're saying is BS. Uh, uh, they don't know. I mean, like how How can a person who doesn't know tell you something? You know, I found this on the humbug, and I was like, I got to do a video today. You know, um, touching on those earthquakes in California. Could you imagine if they had this kind of waste stored in a place like the valley that was hit? Right on. Come on, that would be horrible. It would be terrible. It would be terrible. That's exactly what it would be. This is why they have this stuff in the places that they do. This is why, like, even a state like Washington is like, they have to be hesitant of, like, how much of that waste could we take? Because if you get hit with the massive earthquake out here, the nuclear fallout, the toxic, radioactive, biologic, all those fallouts are going to happen all at once. It wouldn't be, and it would be people dying left and right from exposure. So, not only is China not taking the trash from people, but already they're starting to do the actual totaling up of what this is going to do to the country. Okay, I'm sure, and I haven't, this is like a new article. I haven't had the time to go and look it up, but I will. Give me a day or so. I'm going to look up cancer rates in China as it pertains to similar chemicals, and if they're startlingly high, then I'm gonna have to do a video where I'm like pretty much like why China always laced everything with arsenic and lead. Like, it totally makes sense now. Think about that for a moment. If they've been dumping this shit for decades in the water or whatever else, right? What makes you what would stop a dirty, wicked white man, right on, and his little Negro crony henchmen from sending this stuff overseas, thousands of miles away? Who's going to stop you? Right. Once it gets there, they have to deal with it. You're talking about sending human waste, dead animals, all kinds of. Remember the stuff I was telling you about that the Chinese were finding, which is why they were like, "No, we're good. You can only send us clean plastic, really clean cardboard. We're not buying, and we're buying that for cheap. We're not buying it for what we used to buy it for." This is why they were like, "Okay, you guys think you're slick. You guys think you got us." That's why the Chinese sent the stuff in the form of toys, taking the same lead, arsenic, toxic waste that they were getting hit with. Okay. Now I'm starting to see, like, yeah, they used the same toxic waste that had covered the plastic that they used to make the toys. It was already contaminated. Right. I don't think that I'm starting to see like they didn't have to do very much. It was already contaminated. If you're using contaminated material, it's done. So you don't have to even worry about it. But trouble in paradise, when I tell y'all, there's so many things coming. This next little article I'm going to do here in about 2 minutes is about Trump's little inner circle. And it's really about the little white dude, Jeffrey Epstein, who I've heard so many people talk about this guy. It's really weird. Yeah, they were paying him back. That's, an eye for an eye, literally. But this Jeff Epstein dude, this is deep. Uh, Trouble in paradise. It couldn't be more realer. Look, this brings back the Pizzagate notion. I need y'all to really understand. See, these dudes on YouTube got so afraid of what Google did to them. They got demonetized and all that stuff because they talked about what really happened, which is that a lot of these people who are high up, right on, prey on the babies. You follow what I'm saying? Whether it be sexually or through physical violence or through mental harm, but they prey on the babies. And so Jeffrey Epstein, you know, being so close to all the famous people and all the influential people he's rubbed elbows with, it just, I mean, they watered down. If you read the article, and I'm gonna show you guys the one that I got because there's a few different ones of it. But if you just read these articles and really look at it, like they really try to make it seem as if, all he was doing was like paying for sex low key to like girls who might have been too young. And it's like, No, that's, I mean, sex with the minor, but I mean, simple solicitation, that's not getting you dragged into a federal court, dog. They're talking sex abuse, sex trafficking, kidnapping, all kinds of shit. But this shit is trouble in paradise. So I tell y'all, this was like, these are the worst things that you could have happen while you're a president. You know, uh, worst things. Worst things. You don't think it was getting bad when Obama was the president? I need y'all to realize just how in the last few years when Trump has been president, how the shit has changed. I'm not talking about the dumping of toxic waste for forever that all those companies were able to get away with, right? They all shook hands and agreed that we'll all be long dead and gone before we can be held accountable. So, because that's the case, I'm not really looking at that. But what I do look at is Trump's created a situation that he understands you can't fix it now. China will never agree to buy U.S. trash. That would be the one thing that would alleviate the situation right away. This is why I told y'all, trash bills are going to go up. It's a must. It's a must. You're talking about dealing with toxic waste. How long until these people create unions that, protect them and protect their health as they should. They should do that. I'm just saying. So now we're going to pull up this other little article about Mr. Epstein, Pizzagate, man. As they were calling Pedogate. I love it. That shit was too funny. One moment. Man, and I thought this article was a lot more interesting of an article for Mr. Epstein, because they're pretty much saying like they don't know how this dude made the money, you know. Like I'm pretty sure they know how he made it, but you get what I'm saying. They're like we can't put a finger on the exact indicators of how this dude really got paid. And that's an important factor because when you're a billionaire and people can't just be like, well, he did this all these years. And like people should know, like, are you a trade guy? Are you an oil guy? What kind of person are you? Here we go. In a neighborhood of millionaires and billionaires, steps from New York's famous museum, Malay, two initials discreetly adorn the entrance of one of the city's most opulent mansions, J.E. The letters stand for Jeffrey Epstein's, the self-described collector of rich and powerful men who has been accused of sexually assaulting girls inside the luxurious Manhattan home. On Monday, as federal prosecutors unsealed new charges claiming Epstein ran a sex trafficking ring that lured dozens of young women to the house. Its heavy wood doors bore crowbar marks, evidence of how authorities forced away in over the sultry 4th of July weekend. Prosecutors said they discovered hundreds, possibly thousands, of suggestive photographs, including those of what appeared to be underage girls. The latest turn in the long, lurid saga of Jeff Epstein comes more than a decade after a secretive plea deal enabled him to avoid similar charges in Florida. Now familiar questions are swirling again about his possible links to the who's who of prominent political and business figures. For all his infamy, there are scant details of how he made his money. While he's frequently called a billionaire, his net worth is hard to ascertain. He ran a money management firm catering to the ultra-rich, primarily the Victoria's Secret founder Les Wexner, but his assets were never made public on Wall Street. His assets were never made public, and few on Wall Street have ever dealt with him as a financier or money manager. According to his lawyers, more than a decade ago, he had a net worth in excess of 9 figures. Today, so little is known about Epstein's current business or clients that only things that can be valued with any certainty are his properties. The Manhattan mansion is estimated to be worth at least 77 million, according to a federal document submitted in the advance of Epstein's bail hearing. He also has properties in New Mexico, Paris, and the U.S. Virgin Islands, where he has a private island and a Palm Beach estate at an assessed value of more than $12 million. He shuttles between them by private jet and has at least 15 cars, including seven Chevy Suburbans, according to the federal authorities. Epstein's early career is better documented. Born in 1953 and raised in Brooklyn, Epstein dropped out of Cooper Union and NYU's Courant Institute. He landed a gig teaching calculus and physics at Manhattan's exclusive Dalton School between 1973 and 1975, according to a 2002 magazine profile, where his students included the son of Bear Stearns chairman Alan Greenberg. He joined Bear Stearns in 1976 as a lowly junior assistant to a floor trader. In a swift rise trading options, he made he made partner 4 years later. With former chief executive officer Jimmy Kane praising his skills, he left in 1981 to set up the J. Epstein and Co. It had an exclusive focus. It would serve only billionaires. Epstein reportedly made all the investment calls. Since the 1990s, the company has been incorporated in the U.S. Virgin Islands and is now called the Financial Trust Company. A person answering the phone at the St. Thomas based company hung up after a request for comment was made. The main client was Wexner, the founder of underwear maker L Brands. Epstein started managing his money in the 1980s, and in 2003, Vanity Fair profile noted that the pair had a close relationship, and close enough for Epstein to acquire the Manhattan mansion from Wexner in 1995. Wexner had purchased the property from a Manhattan prep school in 1989, according to the city records. In 2011, the company that Wexner used to purchase it transferred to Epstein's Virgin Island-based Maple Incorporated for $0. Epstein signed both sides of the transaction. People have always said it's like we have one brain between two of us. Each one has a side, Epstein said in a 2003 profile. Wexner, who has a $6.7 billion fortune on the Bloomberg Magazine Billionaires Index, declined to comment. He cut ties with Epstein more than a decade ago as suspicion about Epstein swirled with alleged victims, saying Epstein used his employees to bring local teen girls to his Florida mansion for sex and paid them to recruit new victims. The girls were as young as 13 years old. None of Epstein's other clients have been identified. While his money management firm remains a black box, the same can't be said of Epstein himself. Even before the weekend, the non-prosecution deal he cut in 2008 has come under growing criticism in recent months, with critics calling for the Labor Secretary Alexander Acosta, who was the lead prosecutor in the case, to resign, since the Miami Herald revisited the case in the plea deal in November report. In a November report. Here we go. Here we go. Today, lurid details were splashed across the media as prosecutors detailed the alleged crimes that occurred at Epstein's home in Manhattan and Palm Beach, Florida, from 2002 to 2005, involving minors as young as 14, and accused Epstein of creating a vast network of victims. Epstein paid victims hundreds of dollars in cash after sex acts, prosecutors said. They were initially recruited to give Epstein massages, which became increasingly sexual in nature. At least three Epstein's employees were involved in recruiting and scheduling minors for sexual encounters with him, as well as unspecified associates, the U.S. said. One was based in New York, while two other assistants based at his mansion in Palm Beach were responsible for scheduling the encounters there and escorting victims to a room in the house. Prosecutors are attempting to seize the Manhattan townhouse through forfeiture proceedings on the grounds that his spacious property was used for sex trafficking. The townhouse was built in 1932 by Herbert Strauss, whose parents owned the H.R. Macy and Company, and it is said to be one of the largest in Manhattan. Epstein's future address could be far less comfortable. The charges he faces carry a maximum 45-year prison term. Whoo! That's what this dirty motherfucker gets. There was something about my guy Botham Shem-Jean I wanted to go over. Let me make sure that find it real quick. Quickly, 1 second. Excuse me. Oh my goodness, excuse me. Oh. Mm. U.S. I know this headline is somewhere close. It was just on my radar. But I think I closed the page by accident when I pulled up everything. Bible shortage? It's crazy. There we go. Bam. Let me make sure that this shit is showing up. Yep, it's showing up. That's good. Okay. This is a fairly short article. It's not super long, but I wanted to illustrate how when I told y'all at first this girl was fucking this dude. Listen, man. About to be two major surprises. This is more trouble in paradise than any of the other ones. I'm gonna tell you why. Because for every single one of these black activists who I didn't know this until I read this article. Some of them probably did. A lot of them probably didn't. We're going to read the article. When we get there, I'll point out the significant information that just in case it overrides. Now, once again, look at this face. Does this look like the face of a cold-hearted white supremacist killer? Cold-hearted bitch? Or does this look like somebody who's like, why did he break up with me? I still don't understand. Why? Let's go forward. She's not tripping that she's arrested. She's fucked up about what happened. An ex-Dallas police officer who fatally shot an unarmed man in September after the officer walked into his apartment won't be able to have a fair trial in Dallas County, according to her defense attorneys. Amber Guyger, 30, is now charged with murder in the September 6th death of Botham Shem-Jean, 26. Guyger said that she mistook Jean's apartment for her own when she got home after an extended day at work. According to Dallas police, Guyger was off duty but still in uniform when she shot Jean, whom she believed was a burglar, police said. Now, Robert Rogers, Toby Shook, and Michael Mawla, attorneys for the former officer, say media hysteria will not allow Guyger to have a fair trial. They requested the September 23 trial to be moved to Collin, Grayson, Kaufman, Ellis, Rockwall, or Fannin County. There are 296 news articles from local media alone relating to the case, according to the motion to change venue. The motion also mentions other news organizations. The coverage has ranged from the absurd, like what Guyger wore to a court setting, to the outrageous, like falsehoods about Guyger being a racist and comparisons of the incident to a form of a lynching, the document says. It further alleges that the media immediately began reverberating the false narrative that merely because Guyger is white and Mr. Jean was black, the incident must have been racial in nature, and includes dozens of quotes from officials and attorneys who mention both Guyger and Jean's race when talking to the media. The document attacks former Dallas County leaders and individuals who tweeted commentary about the shooting. It says former Dallas County District Attorney Faith Johnson spearheaded the coverage. The motion alleges that the attorneys for the Jean family released information before it was made public and attempted to encourage the Prime Minister of St. Lucia, Mr. Jean's home country. Did y'all know that? Did you fucking know this guy was from St. Lucia? To engage the United States government and say our citizen was killed in your country in an unbelievable way, and we are looking to you to make sure that justice is done. This is really why the bitch got arrested, because this nigga's a foreign diplomat, cuz. Let's go ahead and break it down. I apologize. Former Dallas Mayor Mike Rawlings also said he spoke with the Prime Minister. I offer my apologies on the behalf of the city of Dallas, Rawlings said 2 days after the shooting. The document also blames presidential candidate Beto O'Rourke for entering the fray by mentioning the case and calling for Geiger's firing during the 2018 campaign stop in Dallas. I fucking love it. They're blaming a white dude too. Like, we're blaming everybody for this shit. And Dallas Councilman Scott Griggs, who tweeted that Jean was killed under very suspicious circumstances. And he was killed under suspicious circumstances. They were fucking. He broke it off, okay? All right, and she couldn't take it. I bet you she knew he was from St. Lucia. They worked in the same damn fucking court building and shit, man. That's crazy. The devil. Look at this face. Look at this face one more time. I have seen women in many of mugshots after they have allegedly committed, heinous acts. Perpetrated heinous acts. These are the allegations. When I say the ones who were guilty, she knew she was guilty and the whole world knew she was guilty, none of them look like this. Okay? Did y'all see Casey Anthony's mugshot? I think she was smiling. She knew she was guilty. The whole world knew she was guilty. But somehow the white girl didn't even get convicted. Right on, about to have a book and a movie based on her sorry ass. About her murdering her own daughter with chloroform. Anyway, look at this chick's face. She was fucking that dude, man. That's the only narrative you didn't see down there. Because that's the one that they don't want you to think about. Anyway, we're pretty much done talking about these suckers. I'm ready to go all in now. It's been a long, funny day. Yeah, that made me feel some type of way, though. I was like, wow. But, I mean, she has real lawyers, though. You feel me? Her lawyers are willing to go to the hill, get disbarred for this shit. Like, that makes the difference. You know, when you have people around you who are just fucking softer than baby shit, you feel me? You know, it's going to kill you. You know. What's popping, bro? What's popping, Mr. Jason? How you doing, family? You know, man, this right here was really a crazy situation. Like, you know, I don't think anybody really appreciated what I was saying about her and what she did with this young dude. You know, like nobody, it hasn't came out yet. The shit is still developing. That's just like with baby girl Jasmine Barnes. You know what I'm saying? Like, I still think that's a funny and I've known too many shooter killer dudes in my life for a dude to tell me who was able to miss everybody else, only kill the little girl, right on. That's all you got? That it seems like that's a targeted hit to me. You know, to me it seems targeted. I could be wrong. You know, I could be very wrong. But that's just one of those things where until it develops fully, I have to speculate it objectively and assume that any party who walked away unscathed has something to do with it. And I'm starting with the mother first and the father. And if they had any kind of insurance on that little baby, then that it makes perfect sense. You know, neither one of you wanted it. You know what I'm saying? Neither one of you wanted the little girl in the first place. You wait some years out. You get some real hitters that one of the dudes know, or maybe you know, and say, okay, she's like. I remember reading an article and saying that each one of the kids had like a designated seat. The shit was so crazy, man. Like it didn't sound right to me. But anyway, I'm doing good, bro. You know, I'm glad you're doing good, man. I just, you know, it's always good to hear from the people, man. You know, the real ones, bro, who are 10 phalanges down, you know. But however, really today's whole thing is just like Trouble in Paradise is exactly that. I started this off talking about how there's pockets in the South, man, that are pretty much, like nuclear waste pockets. They're like a certain part of the article went on to say if there was an earthquake in one of these little areas where they have all this plutonium built up, they said it would make Chernobyl look like spilled milk. You follow me? And this is the type of fire that they're playing with. But guess who would be the immediate victims of that? Black people. So this is why the white people don't care. Sure, you lose a few white folk, but they don't. That's nothing. That's nothing. You always have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. That's just how it goes. So when you have people who can't even appreciate that there's real trouble right now, okay? There's trouble on the East Coast. Did y'all not hear me say a state like Massachusetts, it might in 2 years could have one landfill? You think Massachusetts is poor? You think places like Connecticut and all those other states aren't going through that? You think Maine and Delaware aren't going through that? You think Rhode Island ain't feeling the pinch over there? They're all feeling it. Man, it's amazing sometimes. Delaware too, excuse me. Don't let me forget Delaware. I'm sorry, Delaware. My bad. However, it's just one of those things where people will, I mean, once again, they will antiquate the situation to nothing because it doesn't actually affect them right then and there. But I could tell you how this shit affects everybody in the nation. And this goes back to China making one move. When I remember when they did the thing with the trash, I was like, this is what's going to jump off the trade. And lo and behold, right after they did this shit with the trash, trade war jumps off. Now, these are just immediate. You could actually say that these are the short-term consequences because the long-term ones of people's health being drastically affected and how they're going to approach that has yet to actually be touched on. People get older every year. How old are some of these rural counties and populations? Right on. What are the ages of these people who are starting to get sick? Man, I mean, it is it is it is it is phenomenal. I want y'all to understand it's coming. It's coming. Your boy ain't lying. I have been trying to show people, say whatever it is that I can say. I'm gonna slowly deviate my energy back into the wall. There's a lot of big things going on, huge, epic, mighty proportion things going down at the wall, but that's not trouble in paradise just yet. That's more like a false assurance, and we haven't gotten to that point yet in the 2019 weekly update because I think I have to remind everyone right now. I know you guys all know this, but let me just remind you again. The whole point and purpose of these weekly updates is to hold to the fire the 1619 prophecy that our ancestors somehow arrived here that year, and that this year is our 400th year of tribulation in a land where in which we are strangers in a strange land. Right. That is the whole sole purpose of this. So don't let that escape you. These things I cover so that way you can see what possible travesties, tragedies, things of cataclysmic proportion, okay, might overwhelm and some folks might succumb to in those days. Oh, you don't think them having plutonium built the fuck up in the South? And if there was a massive storm, forget a massive storm that offset those things, you don't think that's gonna affect things? I mean, y'all better realize your boy ain't tripping. I'm not stupid. Not by a long shot. None of y'all are stupid by a long shot. You're paying $60 now, sister. I pray it doesn't get crazy because California asking for help, you know what I'm saying, from the president. Trust and believe. Some of that help came with, you're going to give us the addresses of these illegals. You know what I mean? You don't get to stand up and be sanctuary state, fuck a city, sanctuary state, okay, and then get to ask the government for help because you suffered an earthquake. No, you've been waging a war against the president, by all intents and purposes, the king of the country, and so now you need his help, right? That's not how it works. You see what I'm saying? That's not even close to how it works. So now California is going to have to play ball in this whole immigration scheme and the building of the wall. Believe that. Now, there are pictures where you can find them. A lot of the guys who work for a lot of these companies that are building the wall, guess what a lot of these guys are? Latinos. Not all of them are. A bunch of these dudes are Latinos and Hispanics that are building the wall. And these are the same type of dudes who will tell you that they believe a lot of the cats who come from south of the border aren't good people. These are guys who will tell you because they come from Mexico. They watch guys come from Central America and South America come up to Mexico and ruin Mexico and give Mexico the reputation that it has now. See, but you would have to talk to a Mexican person to know that and to understand that and to really get into the whole mentality of like why they go so far out of their way to separate themselves from the other groups of Hispanic people. Right. Because I'm not trying to be known for the fuckery that they're known for. It's no different that what a black person does when they get a college a degree, some money, nice car, maybe a home, and they will sometimes like make themselves different than other black people. Whereas you have black people who get all those things and they still understand to the whole world, I'm just a nigga. It doesn't matter how much money I have. To the black people, maybe I'm like hope, maybe like a light. But to the rest of these people, you know what I'm saying? I'm just a nigga who got a couple dollars and managed to not get crushed their whole life. You see what I'm saying? And that's how they play the game. It's really, 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 really heartbreaking when you look at how once again, you could argue that these civil rights activist people sold the soul of their children before they were even born. Okay? These people invited these companies into their homes and into their counties after being double crossed, triple crossed, quadruple crossed by the country so many different times. And as opposed to doing what their other black counterparts did, which was uproot and leave, they stayed. So now they've perpetuated a cycle of suffering where maybe now you're not a hardcore sharecropper, but for decades and generations, if you've ever wondered why people in the South act in these in particular areas sometimes have poor health, it's not what they're eating. It's literally everything in the air, everything in the dirt, everything in the water, right on top of what they eat. So if they have poor habits as a person, they smoke, they drink every day, they have a relatively sedentary lifestyle on top of all these other monumental factors that are microscopic, you know what I'm saying? That are at a subatomic level, can't be seen or identified by a man's eye for sure. There's no, I mean, it's disgusting. It really is, because it speaks to the level of volume of unwillingness that black people have to save their own lives. You think I'm gonna stay somewhere where they're like, yo, the water, fuck it, I'll leave and be poor. I'll leave. I'll leave before my baby has a chance of growing up with the arm growing out of their body. You see what I'm saying? I'll leave before that happens. Now, on the flip side of that, all these people that have been able to live for all these years, it's because their bodies have grown a certain level of tolerance, okay, and maybe even codependency on these toxic chemicals and this radioactive material. I know it's hard to believe, but this is why they had to do that earthquake over there in Japan, right? And those reactors released all that stuff into the water. See, this is why they had to do it, because I told you all about it already. They bombed Japan all those years ago, okay? The effects of all the radioactive stuff, like there's no telling what will happen if they actually, let's say, maybe had clean water and clean air. There's no telling. There's no telling. Like, people have to understand that there's, you know, the long range consequences for a chemical, nuclear, biological fallout take more than just 2 days. There's going to be immediate deaths okay, immediate casualties that obviously take place. But in the long term is where you actually get to see how people are fully affected. You got to see how Burke County, I'm pretty sure it was Burke County, was higher in every part where all ages and then from 0 to 24 as far as the mortality rate was concerned, where it was much higher there than the entire US. The entire US, even all ages, where it was at a negative rate as far as the mortality rate was concerned compared to their county. So even when you look at it from that point of view and that standpoint alone, you have to admit to yourself and say, hey, okay, well, what's been introduced to their environment for people who are living somewhere rural that shouldn't have all these other factors in it, like a big city does, that pollutes their air, right on, and all the other things that they may need to survive throughout the day. It's hard for me to believe, it's hard for me to conceive in my mind that number one, nobody knew. Number two, that the people who did know, I have a hard time believing in my mind that any one of them can strum up an argument of caring. Like you can't tell me that you give a damn. You follow what I'm saying? You're a politician who's saying next year, the next voting cycle, we'll see about if people want to take biowaste. Forget the biowaste. What about all waste? What about all this shit? Like, what if we don't want any of it in our town? What if you say, hey, look, you guys produce that stuff, you guys keep it in your city. Right on? You're so smart, you're so advanced. Why don't you go ahead and do something? Right. You see how they're trying to lean on things like putting the stuff way down far up the ground or trying to turn, they're trying to make radioactive concrete, y'all. That can't be safe. That can't be right. Like what happens when it gets rained on and then the sun comes onto it? Like, is there no burn off of chemicals that are still present? And I mean, it's like there's so many different ways of looking at that as to why you can say like that's idiotic. But I'm just like I'm surprised. I don't get it. You know what I mean? Like how is it that a state like Washington, where I live, now mind you, is for how large the population is, the land is bigger than the people, if that makes sense. So in Illinois, there's like 16 million people. In Washington, there's like 8. But Washington is probably easily double the size of Illinois. So there's a lot more space, even in the rural areas. So when you get to talking about, population sizes and just understanding how that actually affects what they're doing. And then hold on, I'm talking about the cities now. The cities have to respect what this creates and what this does. You have a dynamic where now, sure, you can say that we're creating jobs for these people, but why don't you just go down there and create actual industries, build actual businesses that people can shop? Like, that's how you build an economy. These people are still poor. Can you dig? When you have 31% of a county living in poverty, and 72% of the people are of one specific genus group, which is black, as they're saying African American, and you're saying that 45% of them, 42% of them are living in poverty. So you're saying almost half the people live in poverty, dude. Follow what I'm saying. And the jobs that you created dealing with this shit, this toxic material that's giving these same people health issues right now to this day, but no more jobs because they lost those jobs. You lost some of those factories and places. You follow what I'm talking about? But that toxic waste is still there. And they're still trying to send it in. Trouble, my people. Big, big trouble. Paradise all over this place. It is no joke, but it's coming. I can only warn somebody so much. If they take it serious, then they take it serious. If they don't take it serious, then I just say, okay, well, at least I tried or attempted to bring up what I know is in its own rights, in its own way, vital and important. Um, like what else do you say to a group of people, you know, who have their own minds to think, they have their own eyes to see, their own ears to hear, you know what I mean, and their own hands to act. I I can only encourage a person to do what it is that I've done, and that's just try to hold these things to the fire the best way that we know how. Um, if you live in the South, if you have family that lives in the South, that lives close to any of these areas that was spoke on in the first hour, you need to really reach out to your family and you need to really get them to consider moving. They're living in cesspools of radioactivity. It can't be safe. The long term, whatever that it can't be safe. You got trains that are literally bringing in tons of human waste daily. And there is no consequence for the spills, apparently. Right. You know why? Because the same people who have lobbyists who go and lobby for them to be able to bring toxic waste and radioactive materials into those counties and cities and to those people are the same people who go and take coffers from these businesses and organizations and corporations, okay, and say, hey, look, what do you want me to do in case of this? What do you want me to do in case of this? You see what I'm saying? And because it's one hand washing the other so much so, there's never going to be any real accountability for any of those groups and those parties, ever, never. Um, I always worry about Black people. It's like my biggest concern is us. You know, I don't worry about. I'm not worried about nobody. I don't care about nobody else. I don't worry about us. You know, at the end of the day, you're what I'm worried about. If your hair curls up like mine, you look similar to Demetrius, I'm worried about you. You know why? Because I know that the whole world, the entire world is against you. And everybody's banking on you to lose. But yet they want your best ability. They want your best effort while you lose. So that way they can suck all that precious life energy, copy all your creativity, all your ingenuity, all those things from you. And then tell you in the end that they're better than you because they had more resources to allocate to putting forth an effort in something that is a lifelong endeavor of yours. It's happened with so many different Black people. You don't think there was a churning in Lewis Lattimore's stomach when he sold the patent to the filament? You don't think he felt sick to his stomach when that happened? He did. And it's no different right now. That there has to be somebody right now alive who has allowed this to happen to those people down there who have put those Black people in that position. And I know their stomach is turning because they're like, how do I fix this? Right, right. If you just started taking in radioactive material just a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, this is recent. You can you you can undo a little bit of what you've done, but because they're so all these people are so greedy and the money grab is so high, and I already said to y'all, a lot of these people feel like they're going to be dead before they're ever held accountable. Right. So, what incentive do they have to actually doing the right thing or anything that even resembles the right thing? You know, none. Of course, that's the whole point of that. Let me tell y'all something else about Trouble in Paradise. The whole comfortable situation that a lot of people are in right now is about to change. A lot of folks are about to end up in situations they've never been in. Um, I can't stress. 15 months from now, you're going to need a passport to fly to get into an airport and fly. In 15 months, God willing or forbid, that the world is still the way it is. Right. Trouble in paradise, you know. So tell me how many of those black people, God forbid something were to happen with the toxic fallout, radioactive fallout, God forbid, right? And you need a passport to get on the plane, and you need to be able to get in the air as soon as possible to have better chances for survival. How many of those black people you think are going to die? Mm, right. See, I'm not being negative. I'm being honest in my approach of my objectivity. I care about my people. I love them very much. It bothers me to think that many of them would just be asked out just like that. Just like that. I heard a brother say the other day that you won't need a passport to fly to Brazil. And I'm just thinking in my head, like, next year you will. You'll need a passport to get from state to state. You see what I'm saying? So see how even if they pass silly ordinance now that is a band-aid to the situation that is to come, there you can't antiquate the importance of all the things that I'm saying. This trade war is going to be painful. The cost of basic goods gonna shoot up, gonna go up. Um, I don't know if it's gonna happen before the holiday season. If I was China, I would try to strike like that, but I'm not China, so I'm not their advisor for that type of stuff. But however, the idea, the mentality that that people don't think that anything big is coming, that something drastic and major is coming, is a fallacy within their own minds that it's probably going to play out very negatively and impact folks in a way that they don't really even understand. I'm doing my best, though. I really am. Um, it's hard to, it's difficult to show somebody something that I already understand and it already makes sense to me. You know, if it makes sense to you, then you already understand. Then I'm just beating a dead horse, and then I'll stop. Uh, but if you guys don't understand how, I mean, one form of waste is no different than another one. You know, so I guess when I talk about a piece of trash like like Jeffrey Epstein, people like him, right, are no less radioactive, toxic material than the stuff that they're dealing with in the South. Because there's a lot of people like him running around in this country who are millionaires, 100,000aires, billionaires, right? Some of them just 10,000aires, some of them just vicious, ruthless criminals who see in themselves the ability to take advantage of others and that they shouldn't be held accountable, you see, and that they're able to spread their influence and their ways and their means as much as possible. Who is it? One second, y'all. It's just Amazon. It's all good. Anyway, um, no, it's not the feds. Stop playing. You're funny. No, but I really do feel like a person like Jeffrey Epstein is no different than radioactive, biological, fucking toxic waste. He's no different. He's infectious. He's a disease. He causes other people to suffer diseases. He they are no different. And it's very appropriate that I compare a man like him to the waste that is polluting and corrosive to the environment that Black people live in. And it's always funny because it's always those toxic bastards that want to be around Black people, those radioactive waste things that want to be around your people and to bring them down. Anybody notice how that black chick was married to the white dude, gave him 5 kids? Now, I think it's funny because yet this white dude doesn't have it in his mind to move his family up out of that area because it's toxic fucking waste. This is who she chose, right? That's who she picked. You see what I'm saying? It's no different. It's no different. These people are, they are pretty much tantamount to irreversible damage to the society. And the damage that they do is so long lasting and so devastating that the effects of it won't be, dissipated until generations to come. He's comparable to that. How many lives do you think he's ruined? Huh? He's probably ruined hundreds of lives, if not thousands. Is he any different from a toxic waste material? No, he's not. Is anybody that has been with him who's enjoyed the same toxic waste, radioactive fuckery that he's engaged in? Are they any different from him? No, they're not. And they're just as dangerous to the environment. Trouble in paradise, my friends. Because they thought it was a sweet thing at first. You gotta understand, when they built those damn reactors, but they are fucking miniature reactors, fucking pieces of shit. Anyway, when they built those nuclear waste landfills, it was a sweet thing. As far as the world knew, that the world was over. Right during World War II, people thought the world was over. They were sure. And then right after World War II, they were like, oh, it's really over now. These guys got nukes. It's done. Right. People forget that. They forget the finite of they're for sure going to war. And it never happened. Right. So then a really good idea turned into a horrible idea. But they had put all the trash where the people that they thought were trash was at. So it didn't even matter. You wonder why black people are crazy coming out of these places, really have actual issues. Dog, you got radioactive fucking toxic waste tendencies pumping right through you. So the best of the people who are able to, once again, their body grows resilient and resistant to this stuff. The worst of it, the people who are affected like the latter, or the aforementioned, I should say, those people are the ones whose body become dependent on the chemical. They can't leave the environment. This is what happens. Give you guys some quick science. Water has memory. Your body is composed greatly of water. The reason why people form addictions is because the water in their body remembers the sensation that it felt. The water has a memory. Okay? So the water in your body is what dictates an addiction, not so much just the mental thing. But that's neither here nor there. Can't really teach people that. They'd have to do the research and understand how the two things fall in line. But they are most definitely in conjunction with one another. Which is why having a good diet is imperative to your health. Anyway, before I get ready to end my rambling and call my day good for the day, because I feel like I delivered. And the first article was really the one that I wanted to read, done what I wanted to do. Let me say this. There is no greater feeling than knowing that the situation. Oh, they did? See? I got to check that out, bro. Got to check that out. But the situation is becoming obvious. What I'm saying right now. There's trouble in paradise, y'all. There's trouble in the place where people are supposed to be happy. I'm not even talking about the earthquakes that hit California. That it's trouble in paradise over there. Talking about trouble in the actual paradise of this whole land, but in a specific spot of the land where it's considered to be much more easygoing, much more laid back. The South is considered to be way more laid back than any other region of the entire country. The most laid back region of the country. They're dumping all this toxic and chemical stuff. You're not you're not going to be able to go to the South to retreat there. It's going to be a fucking toxic wasteland. Why do you think Babylon is going to be uninhabitable by man when it's all said and done? Oh my goodness. When the earth shakes, causes all that. Anyway, the fallout from what I believe will happen one day is going to be far too great for anyone to ever want to step foot on this land ever again. It is 5:48 Pacific Standard Time. Every time I say that, I'm getting ready to close it out. Somebody show up, but somebody show up, they're just going to be asked out. Because I want to get ready to do some Bible stuff tomorrow, maybe in the middle of the day, similar time to like right now. And I got to get these other verses together. Because I have to show how the vision of Enoch is literally the entire Bible. Like, you know, like it's the entire, like his vision of the animals is the entire scripture plus our entire existence, summarized, paraphrased, so that way he didn't know or didn't see, he couldn't understand, he couldn't have known exactly what it is that he was seeing. You follow what I'm saying? But Enoch was right. No man shall see as he has seen. It's that simple. It's just that simple. No man shall, because even the prophets, their visions are smaller prophecies, contingent of things that Enoch covers in some proportions, greater detail than what they say, or there's an aspect of it that they don't highlight that Enoch most definitely highlights and points out. So yeah, I got to get all the verses for that ready. That's going to be an interesting piece. Got to find my file for the Hitmaker so I can upload that on my other little channel. What else? Getting ready for my next White Heaven. The restoration, restitution, reparations. ... Make me whole. When I drop that one, I might not do another White Heaven. That might be the tell all. I might do a pre-upload video. So it's going to take a couple weeks to really put all that together. But I might do a pre-upload video on that and then do a live stream right after I pre-upload it, like let the upload stay up for like a day, and then do a live stream following up as a review or something like that. But you know, I just want to put an end to this whole reparations, restorations, restitution talk. And I have to put an end to it in my own way, using the White Heaven angle, because I think a lot of these guys have right intent. Right, to say that any man who wants black people to get what's theirs has the wrong intent, I would be smoking way more than marijuana, and I would, and that would be an admission that I would have to just say. But to say that they have the right way of going about it, or a way that is, you could actually say is truly, totally righteous, you could argue that all day, and because that's the case, it's hard to get behind a lot of what most of them are saying. I have a hard time getting behind somebody who ultimately is using the same things that they claim that white people do to black people on black people. I can't rock with that. You know, I can't rock with somebody saying that, well, because white people do it, I'll do it because the end justifies the means. And it's like, no, it doesn't. You know, because you don't have the power in your vessel, and as a single person, you don't have the power to make whole anyone. you shouldn't try to dictate the term where in which a person should be made whole. Or, you know, there's nowhere to start. It starts differently for all different peoples, you know, and once again, until my grievance that I feel like I'm the only one who really has had a torch in my hand running around, is that all black people are not the same. So every single American descendant of a slave or whatever, all those people don't have the same grievance. All of them don't have the same complaint. And until that is recognized, until they stimulate their minds with that, and that can percolate positive thought for them, productive thought, where they can actually take that and use it, then it's really a moot point. Because a lot of guys sound stupid to go back and forth to say, well, man, we from Kemet. And then they hold hands and lock arms with people who say that black people are aboriginals to this land. Because technically you're self-defeating, right? So which one of those people do you think deserves more reparations? The billion plus aboriginals that got slaughtered? You think their children deserve more than the people who got brought over here and built everything? I mean, how do you determine that? Do you determine that people who are only mixed with both of those bloodlines are entitled to what this country has to offer? Do you say that, well, if you're only a person who was brought here by ship, then you can only get this, and if your family is only people who are aboriginal and you can't prove that they were brought by ship, or there's no true Negro lineage in your blood now, does that make it null and void? You see what I'm saying? I mean, like, where do you draw the line on that? You know, and this is, to me, my way of looking at it is so much more different, and it's so much more objective, and it creates a lot more dialogue, healthy dialogue, because it allows for a person who doesn't want to be, they're like, I'm not Egyptian, I don't think I'm Egyptian, I don't feel Egyptian. You don't have to be sequestered unto that little area. If you don't want to be an Aboriginal, you don't have to be an Aboriginal. If you don't want to be a Hebrew, whoever you think you are, you be that, right on. But just understand that you're not, just like they're saying that people who aren't born in America and raised in America, they're not entitled to the treatment of Black Americans. Okay, well then, why don't you say that about Botham Shamjeen? Right on. I want you to say, well, he's just another black dude, right on, in America, who came from another country, who had no business dealing with white people like that in the first place. Right. You could say that, or you could just say, you know what? People are all different, even within these groups. And until we respect the differences of these people within this umbrella term group, right on, and respect their grievances, you're not going to get nowhere. You're not going to tell me as a black man that you're against a certain caste of people who you label derelict, but yet you'll hold hands with the homosexual, or you'll hold hands with the person who will justify the children of a person who does not come from our genetic seed stock to their children being our genetic seed stock. That's bull. It's bullshit. And this is the problem. You have too many people who they all want to get along. They all want to be friends. You see what I'm saying? But yet, when you disagree with them is the only time you get to see their fangs. But they should show their fangs all the time. They shouldn't be afraid to show their fangs. But because they choose to do so cowardice, right on, and in such a way, in a measure where you have to question their true intent. I always question the intent of a person who asks me for money repetitiously all the time, right on. Why do you need my money to do something? You don't have your own money? You see what I'm saying? But then they will speak on the struggle of the people that they're supposed to be trying to help and save, and say that some of these people have created their own struggle, yet while in the same breath speak on the wickedness of the systems that create these struggles in the first place. So which is it? This person fucked up, or the system is fucked up? Which one comes first? I need to know. And if the system is fucked up, a person could never be derelict in their manhood or their womanhood. Right. Because if the policies truly do change how a person thinks, and I don't believe that policies do that. I believe policies change how you act, but they don't change how you think. And if a person can tell me right now that a piece of paper with words on it makes them think differently, okay, then we need to start putting all kinds of shit on paper. But if that's not the case, and the actions and the words that are written are to some degree feasible, understandable, or acceptable, and a person engages in those activities, one cannot say that this person is now lesser than or has failed themselves within a society that was created. Hold on, the systems within it were created against that person in the first place. It goes against all good reasoning and all good sense, every piece of it. With that said, I can contend something like Trouble in Paradise. I know what I'm talking about. I know for a fact. I wouldn't lie to you about something as major as they wrote it off as the Bible Belt. Right on, but they didn't tell you that it's turning into a toxic radioactive cesspool. They didn't say that, did they? No. That's what it's turning into. And these same people who I was just speaking on, who want you to get your reparations, and want you to get your restitution, and want you to get all these things. These guys have a legitimate way. They have, I'm trying to show them the grievances that Black people have. I don't live in Georgia. I don't live in Carolina. Don't live in Alabama. Okay? You follow what I'm saying? I don't live in any of those states. I don't live in Virginia. I don't live in any of those states. I don't live in Florida. I don't live in any of those states. Okay? It would take someone who lived there to strum up a real grievance. And it would take people from several states over all getting together, not acting as rogue groups with their own rogue tendencies, doing the random money grab, to say, okay, we need to get together and say we want all of these groups out of all of our states, out of all of our cities, counties, municipalities. We want them gone. Right. But they won't do that. But yet they will fleece the Black people. The same poor people who I'm defending the poor and saying that they're only like that because of the environment. It's not the policy. Okay. If the environment allows you to do something, that the laws of Moses are policy. Okay, just because that was what the people were supposed to do doesn't mean that's what they're going to do. All right. Right. It only influences how you act, not what you think or what you feel or even believe, for that matter. It just tells you what you can or can't get away with. And when people accept those basic, I mean, that's basic. That's so basic. Okay, to be able to understand that this is another reason why the Most High God never wanted man to write anything down, because they're confirming things, yet they don't act on these things. This is why it's etched in stone with Moses, the laws, that is, because it can't be changed. But because you can amend the law and continually amend it, the law that was meant to protect someone now is meant to offend them, right on, or oppress them. So this is why the whole ordinance and policy thing falls on deaf ears with I. All right? Because if policy was all that it took to change the situation, they've passed a mountain of legislation throughout the years that should have helped Black people. But because other groups were able to attach themselves because of this altruistic nature that Black people house within their souls, their spirits, Black people were oppressed again, yet again. Now, you could say that, oh, they took from us what was meant for us, or you could say that you allowed them to take it from you. Right. And be honest with yourself and tell the honest truth. Just like they allowed those people to go there and dump toxic waste right by where they live. Right. and park shit trains in their neighborhoods. Because that's what they think of black people. And that's what these same people who ask for their hard-earned money think to them. Ain't that about a shame? But they're not going to hear me, though. They're not going to hear me until it's going down and it's every man for himself, every person for themselves type stuff. And they really get to see the dog-eat-dog mentality that a lot of these guys that they were behind had in the first place, still have, embody, envision. Let me tell you the purpose of morals. And so that way, when there is no rules, you maintain a level of decency. A person who has morals might say, you know what, I can only go so long until I clean my body. I must clean my body after a certain period of time, by any means. Right. A person with morals says, you know what, I'm not going to let my family starve by any means. I ain't going to let you kill me, and I'll keep myself alive by any means. However, because we've been taught to believe that the only way we're going to change things in this society, we've been taught to believe that it's going to take every single black person to lock arms and pretty much stand up on their feet. And it's like, no, I've said it. I will continue to say it. Small unit cohesion has won wars, will win this war for black people. It will be a small group of people that are able to get in tune and in frequency to ingratiate, if you will, the interest of the Most High, not his action, but to just get his interest that he may act. It's going to take a small, very little group of people for that. Not going to take a large group of people. So we're not looking for everybody to be on. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm not saying the less the better, but I'm saying that the less people there are to look at, the better the quality it is that you know that you're dealing with. I know everybody here is quality because there's so little of us. And I know that I don't attract low quality people, even when I don't agree with them, even when they don't agree with me. When I say low quality, that's in so many different spectrums and avenues. I couldn't isolate that to just one little thing. But let me go ahead and say this right here. It has been a battle of a year already. The year's halfway up, still fighting court cases from last year. It has been a learning opportunity for me, to say the least. I have learned very much about the legal system, about some of the inner workings. I've become resigned to the fact that they may have me again in Seattle for almost another year. I'm hoping not, but if they do, I'm resigned to it all, and nothing I can really do. You know what I'm saying? Like, nothing I can do. Okay, so I just have to just put together the battle plan for this whole Geneva thing, so that way, I have to figure it out. That is one of the only ways that I feel like black people would stop for a moment and just look and see what was going on. There'd be a lot of people who would be mad at me, but there would be a lot more people who would be happier because I'm contending we're all not the same. It's a basic implication. How hard is that? They acknowledge the diversity of all these other groups of people who come from similar backgrounds, almost look exactly the same, get called different names, yet they will umbrella group us all here and abroad? No. Bullshit. I call bullshit. And I'm not living like that. I won't live like that. I'm going to end Trouble in Paradise on this note. E. Treasy, if he can't separate himself from this Jeff Epstein situation fast enough, I'm not going to say dude would get impeached, but it would make winning this next time around a lot more interesting. Not to say that he couldn't win, but it would be a lot more interesting. And then that might prompt him to do things that he's not doing right now, like speed up the tempo to certain things that he's trying to have implemented. So we need to watch how this situation develops. When I say trouble, it's trouble in paradise right now. Trouble, big trouble. We are 7 months and 8 days in to the current year. If we were going based on the calendar of Enoch, this is 17 days into the third month. Don't worry, we're going to talk more about all that stuff. I'm ready. I'm ready. I think I'm thinking I touched pretty much all the bases. I think I'm good. I'm dead serious though. That this right here, it would be different if dude wasn't so close to aging Trump, and Trump wasn't a billionaire and he wasn't a billionaire, and they both didn't live in New York and shit like that. Like, because I mean, this is gonna sound flagrant, but don't be surprised if there's like a sacrifice candidate from the Democratic side who pretty much insinuates that Trump may have been involved or try to implicate Trump in some of those sex parties that involved underage girls. Don't be surprised. 0%. None of that at all. Okay? Don't be surprised. Nothing is off the table. And if you guys don't remember, one of the people who got pulled into the Trump administration was a screenwriter. You know what I'm saying? I would be hard pressed to not believe that some of the things that have taken place in this last year have not been totally cultivated events by somebody who knows how to work the hearts and minds through camera work. However, I said all those things. I said I was pretty much done. I am pretty much done. It's always an honor. I love talking to y'all. You guys are, man, talking to y'all is the shit. It is like best thing ever. You know, totally therapeutic. Not just because anybody can't say anything right back to me, because if you wanted to disagree, you could. If you don't want to listen, you don't have to listen. It's just, I just love the interaction. I love the fact that I just get to think of everything right here and now. I don't write it down. I don't try to memorize anything. It's just a freestyle every time. That's the beautiful thing. You know, I've only written a few things ever since I've been doing this. You know, I think that's important to give you the honest me, you know, and not try to show you, you know, how I can calibrate all these different things and then have them all together in one area. You know what I mean? Isolate them. No, that's bullshit. To show you who I really am and speak it as it is. But I I appreciate you guys' time, energy, your love. You know, I love you back. And not tomorrow, sometime soon this week, because I'm right now. I'm just looking for work. So in between doing this and doing that, I'll do an upload. All right, y'all.